Thank you for tuning in, guys. Today I'm going to be talking about acid loop trips because they have been something that have confused me for forever. I hear about them all the time. They seem to be an experience that everybody is going through on acid, and I was confused because I went through I thought I went through an acid loop on my first trip ever. But then as I talked to people about what I went through and they'd share, their experiences with acid loops, it would just sound like insanely different. But after doing some research online, it seems to be that there are 3 different types of loops that people have that are extremely common. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the 3 different types of acid loops you can have, and I'm going to break it down in order of how intense they are. And while I do that, I'm going to be having a natural Shilajit tea. I got a link down below if you want to pick up some natural Shilajit, and you can use the coupon code JACK10 to get 10% off, and that way you're also supporting the channel. Yeah, I don't know if you know anything about Shilajit, but I've been taking this almost for 2 weeks now. It's really impressive. I did an update on TikTok talking about some of the stuff I was going through, and I got comments because it was really positive. I got a lot of comments of people just being like, you could be reading off a script, or obviously you're just doing this for the paid promotion sort of thing. Basically, my reply to that is, after taking psychedelics, I feel like we manifest the reality that we kind of believe we deserve for ourselves. And if I was trying to rip people off to make a quick buck, even if I didn't believe in this stuff, then I would not be manifesting a good reality for myself. So believe me when I tell you, this does some insanely awesome stuff for mental clarity, energy, and it is backed up with hard science, which always makes that a bonus. What am I doing? So the first type of loop that you can experience is called an emotional loop. This is the loop that I experienced during my first trip on acid. And the reason why it's called an emotional loop is because you cycle through the same emotions over and over again within a certain period of time. So it could be for half an hour, it could be between 2 hours, but basically within that period, you will literally just cycle through the same emotions over and over, and you will be aware of the fact that you're cycling through those emotions over and over. So in my case, I remember when I was experiencing the emotional loop, I felt like I had this insane revelation, and I'd never experienced acid before. This was my first acid trip, so it was really hard for me to make sense of it, and it's hard for me to remember what it was that I felt like I was realizing, but it was an awesome feeling, whatever it was, and it felt amazing. I was listening to music at the same time, and whenever I'd have this revelation, the beat would just drop, and I'd start celebrating, feel amazing, and then I'd want to articulate what it was that I was going through. I opened up Snapchat, started just talking to the camera about what it was that I was experiencing and realizing, and as I was doing that, I'd realize I actually don't really know what it is that I'm going through, and I can't actually articulate what it is that I'm celebrating. And then I'd get really quite uncomfortable because my brain was hurting, just trying to make sense of it. I would start pacing back and forth, being like, what was that? What's happening? And then I would work my way back there. Eventually I'd start kind of figuring it out, and I'd work in harmony with the music, because as the music was building up, I'd get closer and closer, and then the beat would drop. And again, I'd have this revelation. I'd start celebrating. And even though I was aware that this was happening over and over, I couldn't stop it. So for the next couple of hours, I would literally just cycle through the same thoughts, the same emotions over and over. And literally, I watched my Snapchat the next day, and I'm just it's literally a repeat, going through the exact same thoughts, saying the exact same stuff over and over. The second type of acid loop that you can have is the logical loop. And the reason why it's more intense than the emotional loop is because there's a simple version of it and a trippier version of it. And the trippier version is the intense one. The simple version is just basically you start to see every aspect of reality being made up of loops. Now, I haven't actually gone through this myself, but I've seen videos online of people having conversations with their friends while they're tripping, and they're like, we're in a loop, this is a loop right now, and which I would always find frustrating because I would want them to explain why, because I just couldn't understand it. Finally, I read this trip report online, which I'll be talking and dissecting on a Patreon exclusive video very shortly. But in this trip report, basically the guy described how he was tripping with his friend, and then they just started seeing the whole of reality being made up of loops. And it was on a macro level and on a micro level. On the macro level, he could see that planets were looping around the sun, that moons were looping around planets, and then on a micro level, electrons were looping around the nucleus, blood was looping through the cardiovascular system. He was just seeing every level of physical reality as loops. And not even just physical reality, was also the way that we interacted with people. It was just like us, the way the mind functioned. Like he described how we would have like a loop for when we're driving, and then we'd enter a loop for when we're at work, repeating the same phrases to customers. And just like every level of reality, we would have loops that we had kind of like started to form in our childhood and then just kind of reinforced and only slightly altered throughout the years. But more or less, we created these loops when we were in our childhood and just been repeating them ever since. Now, the trippier version, this guy whose trip report I read out does describe, and I think it's the version of logical loops that I've gone through, because for me, I've talked about it a little bit on this channel before in my video, What Acid Taught Me About Deja Vu. Basically, I was with a friend and I just started to get really negative vibes from him because this was the first time I'd ever tripped on acid around him. And I'd always kind of had a very, I wouldn't say negative friendship with him, but there was a lot of friction there. And it was all coming to the surface now to the point where I literally needed space. And so I went to another room and then it felt like I just gained access to the multiverse. And I could literally just see like us, like me and my friend, interacting in all of these different realities. And it was just like a loop of like, there was us in one workplace, and then there was us where I was like a friend of his ordering an ice cream while he worked inside an ice cream truck. And I was just like seeing all these different versions of us and all these different realities. And we were going through the same problem over and over again. It was like a loop where there was an issue that just needed to be addressed, and nothing would change until it was addressed. Which I did address in that night. I talked about it in the video that I linked before. Now, the final loop is the experiential loop, the most intense one. And if you want to know what an experiential loop is like, it's basically like the end scene of the first Doctor Strange. Literally where Doctor Strange gets the bad dude caught in this loop when wherever he dies, it just restarts and they literally go through the same events over and over. That's exactly what an experiential loop is like. This is where you literally seem to repeat the same moment in time over and over. So if you're with a friend, it will feel like you're literally having the same conversation over and over. If you're watching a movie, it will seem like the same scene is coming up over and over. It'll seem like an actual moment in time is repeating itself. Now, normally you need a pretty high dose of acid in order to experience this. My friend Phoenix went through this type of loop, and it was so powerful that even once the trip was over, he still believed he was in a loop for the entire year afterwards. So I would often see him, and whenever I'd see him, he would tell me that like some sort of major event that happened, he knew it was going to happen. Or like he would say that he was sure it had already happened. He'd feel like he'd already experienced it. It sounds pretty full on, and to be honest, it was pretty full on, and I was a little bit worried for him, but I think he just had deja vu to the next level. Like that's what it seemed like it was. Like a lot of stuff was triggering some major deja vu. But yeah, that's the third type of loop, the experiential loop. And as far as I know, those are the three loops that we experience on acid. There may be others, but I haven't seen anybody talk about them. If there are, I can't imagine what they would be. So if you guys have gone through something else, definitely write it down below. But yeah, guys, I find it extremely fascinating that we are all experiencing loops when we take acid, yet they can all be different. I would expect us to kind of maybe have, you know, all of us go through the emotional loop or something like that. Like that seems like something, well, the chemicals just interacting with your brain in this way, and so it's evoking you to go through the same emotions over and over. But the fact that we can have that experience, or we can actually have a logical loop where we interpret all of reality as a kind of loop, or we literally feel like we're going through the same moment in time over and over, it sounds like there's something more to this. I know there's a lot of philosophy grounded in the idea that we live in a loop, like what is it? I know Nietzsche's got this idea of the eternal return, I think it was, or something like that, where basically the life you live, you just live the exact same life over and over. He believed, I think, that was our ultimate destiny. But there's also similar philosophy where people believe we almost live the exact same life over and over, but we just we will keep doing that until we make the right decision in every moment of our life or something like that. Like there's all sorts of different, theories and philosophies about the fact that we are living on a loop. Either way, guys, if that is the case, if our foundation of reality is a loop, and especially if we've got the eternal return going on, make sure you live in the life that you'd want to live. And with that, guys, I just want to thank my patrons for supporting these channels. It means the world to me. I say that every time I'm entering the Patreon loop, but generally, guys, I am so grateful for the fact that you contribute what you contribute to this channel, and 100% you are like family to me. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video to the very end as well. If you like the video, and subscribe if you want more psychedelic content. And otherwise, I'll see you all soon. Peace.